All right, go ahead, Chris.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mark. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us again for the March Broadband Task Force meeting. We've got a great agenda today, I think. I hope you do as well. We're going to take care of some housekeeping items, and we've got some updates as well as some presentations and some breakout work to do today. Really focusing around our upcoming report for the end of this year's efforts in broadband expansion. So with that, I don't know that we have any other housekeeping items. I'll defer to Mark as he does the public comment here next. But Mark, do you want to move into public comment unless there's other housekeeping items you or somebody else at the PSC has?
Okay, I'll just get right into attendance. So welcome everybody to the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Today is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. I would just remind everyone that this is a public meeting that is being recorded. A meeting agenda is available on the Public Service Commission events calendar and also on the task force webpage. Also, in an effort to maintain audio quality, please mute yourself when not speaking. I also ask that any members of the public be mindful of their audio and remain muted throughout the duration of the meeting, other than during the public comment period. I'll go ahead and do roll call for those who are members of the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Bob Abrams.
Here.
Biko Baker. Kwame Barnes. Marta Bechtel. She let me know she'll be running late, so we'll see if she pops on there. I'll be on the lookout for that. Brittany Beyer. Sal Carranza.
Here.
Lori Collins.
I'm here.
Doug Cox. Angie Dickinson. Emily Dittmar.
Here.
Russ Falkenberg.
Here, Mark.
Thank you. Celeste Flynn.
Here.
Chris Herjong. Justin Hebner. Gail Hike. Barbara Koldos.
Noon.
Chris Myers here. State Senator Mark Liner staff. Jose Martinez.
Present.
State Representative Mersalver staff.
Here.
State Representative Ratcliffe for staff. State Senator Path for staff. Rachel Shumlin.
I'm here.
Thank you, Rachel. Steve Schneider.
Here.
Michelle Schuler. She let me know she would not be in attendance. Also, Brett Schupner and Chet Shreve let me know they would not be in attendance. And finally, Chad Young. I do not believe I missed anyone, but if I did, could you please let me know now? Okay, I'll keep an eye on that. Now is the time where we will allow for public comment. This is the sole opportunity for members of the public to make a comment during this meeting. Members of the public may soon unmute and make a public comment should they desire. I do ask that the public comment remain brief and also pertain to the subject of broadband access. You may also utilize the chat function in Zoom to let us know you would like to make a public comment as well. I will ask for public comment now. Second call for public comment. And last call for public comment. Okay, hearing none. As a note, written public comment is also accepted on an ongoing basis. We have directions on how to do so on our task force webpage, along with other information like meeting agendas, recording, and updates. I will hand it back to Chris to lead us through the rest of the agenda. Chris?
Thank you, Mark. So moving into our agenda today, we've got an update from the Public Service Commission done by Alyssa, who's going to update us on an alphabet soup of different areas at the PSC. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. I do have an alphabet soup of updates. I will try to spell them out and say them. Let me start by talking about some actions that have happened earlier in March with the Commission. On March 7th at the Commission's open meeting, the Commission awarded what was called Capital Projects Infrastructure, Broadband Infrastructure Grants. And so the Commission had received 124 applications requesting over $200 million. They selected 30 projects. and awarded $43.2 million of capital projects funds. Those 30 projects will cover between 15 and 16,000 unserved and underserved residential and business locations. So we're excited that the commission made those awards and that the grants were competitive. Sort of next steps for the commission is the commission issues an order after an open meeting, and then we start by grant agreements. But it was a really competitive and robust process with a lot of great applications, and exciting to, even though BEAD is not quite here, to continue to be deploying federal broadband funding. And so that was CAP projects broadband infrastructure. Also, on that very same day in the afternoon, the state of Wisconsin received notice from NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, that our digital equity plan had been accepted. And so this plan, if folks remember, is the plan that we kicked off the planning for it way back in October in Wausau to basically have that joint meeting between this group and our digital equity and inclusion group. That group worked for over 13 months, 184 meetings, 70 of 72 counties completed a survey, 5 of 11 tribes, and then 10,000 other Wisconsin residents did the WISER survey. So we took all of that data, all of that meeting information, all of our listening and talking sessions with different groups from what was called covered populations, so communities that traditionally are underconnected or disconnected. And we developed what in the end was a 136-page digital equity plan. It has been accepted by NTA, and what that means is now the state is kind of in the position of eligible for the next tranche of Digital Equity Act program funding, and that's called Digital Equity Capacity. I don't know why they keep naming these things all so close, but we're expecting that the federal government will come out with a notice of funding, and that will have the state's exact allocation in it. And then the state will have the opportunity to apply, since we completed and had a successfully accepted digital equity plan. So really exciting news there from the commission. A few other updates. Our BEAD Volume 1 and our BEAD Volume 2 are not approved. So we are hoping very soon to at least have Volume 1 approved. We do not have a timeline that we can update the task force on, but our fingers are crossed that it will happen soon. But I think you maybe have heard me say that 2 other times, or somebody on our staff say that. So just a note that we're still waiting for kind of final approvals. And once we get Volume 1, that's when we run that internal state challenge, like Badger, the PSC, we like to call it. And then when Volume 2 is approved, that's when we can start our sub-granting process for BEAD. So those things are still in waiting. 2 other quick things I just wanted to mention to this group, and then I might tee it up to my colleagues for anything I forgot, is the Affordable Connectivity Program. That's the federal program that was providing a $30 per month discount to certain eligible low-income households, is expected to expire be depleted of funding in the month of April. Yesterday was the deadline for internet service providers to provide subscribers to that service, a second notice that it was ending. So customers would have received a second notice about their options. But in the state of Wisconsin, 427,000 households and over 1 million people are currently receiving that benefit, and it is expected to end in April. So just a note, that's the ACP. It's a federal program. It is not run by the state. Although some people think it is, but it's not. And then finally, I think the final thing on my list, sorry, I'm looking. Oh, 2 other things. If you haven't seen them, we have these really great county profiles we put up. They were in our newsletter. But they're really nice. They show a county by county, sort of your BEAD priority locations, your BEAD eligible locations, where we think there's ongoing construction. I'm sure somebody will, I knew it, Rory. It's in chat now if you'd like the link. But if you haven't seen them, they're really nice. Again, they're based on some 2022, end of 2022 data. They'll be updated, but they're a really good sort of initial planning doc for communities or for people in the state who want to see kind of what BEAD eligibility and priority looks like on a county by county basis. Those are the county profiles. Final piece I'll mention is the first week of April, the commission intends to open another type of capital projects grant. This one is not for broadband infrastructure. This one is for digital connectivities and navigators. So it's more of a digital equity program, and it's to make Wi-Fi available in certain apartment buildings or certain manufactured home communities to provide devices to community residents who don't have them or don't have devices that meet their needs. And then if you do sort of any of those assets, to provide digital navigators. And digital navigators are kind of a jargony term, but they are right out of task force recommendations from both our first and our second report. But those digital navigators are the folks that help, they have a trusted relationship with people and they help them sort of decide what service to get, decide what device, help them when their device gets sick. And so that grant program, when task force members see it, I hope when the instructions come out, I hope as you're reading it, you go, oh yes, we made recommendations to do this type of support when we're doing funding. We wanted navigators. There's a lot of sort of things from task force reports embedded in those grant applications instructions. So exciting progress there too. That is the end of my alphabet soup, unless Rory, I'll invite you. Nope, did I hit every A, B, C? Thank you. Chris, I will
Wait,
pass it back to you.
Didn't really mention workshops there, Alyssa.
I didn't. You're right. UW Extension and the broadband office are hosting regional workshops. Kristen, you could have corrected me. No. And they're throughout the state tomorrow and the next day, but all into April and May, one-day workshops that go over permitting, community endorsements, understanding BEAD, broadband expansion for local communities. The target audience is local elected officials, broadband champions, broadband, if you have like a local task force. But if you can attend one, I would encourage you to register. If you have a way that you can help share the word about the future ones, we would very much appreciate it. Sorry, I missed it. Now back to you, Chris.
No problem. And that's actually a great segue when you talk about those workshops and helping communities kind of get organized to expand broadband, because our next item on the agenda is about public-private partnerships. And we've got Bill Nemeth, President of Loss Mitigation Solutions, and the Boulder Junction Vice Chair for High-Speed Broadband Expansion Committee to talk about the efforts up in Boulder Junction, which were over a number of years. I know we weren't wearing masks, so prior to the pandemic, I had an opportunity to meet with the folks in Boulder Junction. This was a group of people that had a plan. They had a goal and they were going to achieve it. So I'm excited to hear from Bill today, talking about their efforts in Boulder Junction. We'll have about 15 minutes for the presentation, followed with some time for question and answer. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Bill.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris, and good afternoon. And thanks for the opportunity to tell our story today. All right, Chris, you see my single slide.
Slides look good.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So this has been 5 years. And if we go back, and I'll explain this, but if we go back even a little bit further, it's been 7 years in the making. So we're going to try to do this very quickly in 15 minutes. So a few quick facts of Boulder Junction. We're in the far north central part of the state. I live 14 miles away from the Upper Peninsula Michigan border. We have 1,000 full-time residents. Our population probably grows to somewhere around 10,000 in the summertime at the peak of the summer. One thing that's very unique about Boulder Junction is 86% of our town is owned by the state of Wisconsin. So 14% is privately owned. That creates some challenges when we're talking about broadband. We have 200 lakes within the town. Our economy is 95-ish% tourism. And that's something that we're looking to capitalize on our broadband and really diversify and build that economy. We've got a really historic and unique downtown, especially in northern Wisconsin, where our business district is located. But we also have another business district on the western part of our county, or of our town, and Highway 51, US Highway 51 goes right through it. We're part of a bike trail that has over 50 miles of paved trails. Not quite sure exactly how many are through Boulder Junction. It has to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 to 20, something like that. And then finally, we are the muskie capital of the world and have been since 1970. So let's talk about high-speed broadband and what do we have? Boulder Junction has 1 gigabit symmetrical service. So that means that it's the same down speed as it is up speed. It's a big deal. And we have that to every home and business throughout the entire town, less one. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. During the projects, and we had 2 phases of projects, we achieved a 74% take rate during those projects, not sometime thereafter. We haven't done a count since last fall, but we're probably north of 75, 76% take rate right now. And then you want to talk about fiber. There's 185 miles of fiber, main line and drop, that was included in our project. So if you take Boulder Junction, that really takes us to Oshkosh. That's how much fiber we have in the ground in our town. The table on the right really provides some data, and you can see that. The last area I want to talk about, however, is easements. We have 38% of our BSLs, or broadband serviceable locations, that are located on a private road. So it's not a town road. That means private easements were required to build that. There were 293. Our team, and it was definitely a team effort, achieved 292. So there's one person who cannot get high-speed broadband. Project success. So we went into this thinking, all right, and we'll talk more about this in a bit, but we knew if we were going to be successful, the state of Wisconsin was going to invest heavily into this project through grants. And we also knew that the town of Boulder Junction was going to invest heavily in this project. So it was all about success. And what does success mean to us? Success meant getting the high-speed broadband service to every stakeholder in the town who wanted it. And that was part of the project. Essentially, we talk about it as turnkey. So how did we get here? And so 7 years ago, coming up on 7 years ago, the Boulder Junction Economic Development Committee did a survey, and it was very successful. So the overall survey was successful, but question 11 was very impactful. And you can read it. It's really about what's really the challenge of growing the economy in Boulder Junction. The number one answer was something like 110 of the 169 responses had to do with the lack of high-speed broadband. Now, just think about this. This is way back in 2017, and I refer to it as kind of the prehistoric days of broadband construction. So things went quiet for about 15 months, and in early 2019, the Broadband Work Group, which was a kind of a ad hoc group, which was part of the EDC, the Economic Development Committee, was formed. And I was fortunate enough to be on that 3-member work group, and it was just the beginning. It really, really was. So what did we do? Number one, we had to educate ourselves. I have a communications background. I've built wireless systems. Another one of our individuals has had a little bit of a techie background. And then one of our work group members had a legal background. So, you know, we had to learn what high-speed broadband was about, what were the options, what was the history, what was the future. That was kind of the piece, because I know there's a lot of discussion about future proofing today. You can't future proof anything because we can't look into a crystal ball and know what things look like, but we wanted to set ourselves up for at least 15 to 20 years. After we became educated, then we had one-on-one meetings, and when I say meetings, I mean plural, meetings with each of our town supervisors and the chairperson. And it's really educating, and it's not once, you know, it's a number of times, and then to get their feedback, and that was critical. So once we did that and we got essentially their buy-in, understanding and buy-in, then we went to our town stakeholders. And you might say, well, okay, who's a stakeholder? We looked at it from the standpoint of a stakeholder was really anybody who was in the town, property owners, electors, and there's a difference, visitors, guests. So we had 8 public information meetings in 3 months. So this is kind of like, you talk about the pouring the fire hose on it. That's exactly what this was, because we had to do a lot of education, and we took feedback, and really, and I might as well jump to the next slide. You might find this kind of comical, because we do. As we did our education and then started going out, doing our outreach, our public information meetings, we would take feedback. So here are the options, you know, what is it that you would like to see? So initially our broadband work group was thinking about, oh, we would do something with DSL on steroids for 100 BSLs. So that was in the February-March timeframe of 2019. By November, we understood that the town wanted the entire town lit up on high-speed fiber optic broadband. Be careful what you wish for. The Boulder Junction stakeholders and electors challenged us, and we were supposed to be the experts. But they challenged us because we were thinking one thing, and the feedback that we received from, they're essentially decision makers. They're the taxpayers. They're the folks who vote in elections. And we definitely listened to them, and it was great that we did. The one thing that we were still kind of shocked even to this day is they wanted to light the entire town in one phase. And we just knew that that was impossible, because those were the days when the Wisconsin Broadband Office and the Public Service Commission was giving grant rounds about $20 million, $24 million. And we just knew that there would be no feasible way. $3.8 million. That is what the Boulder Junction electors approved on November 14th, 2019. And I got to say, I was completely blown away, but very impressed. And I was impressed with the commitment and the support of the community, because they were all forward thinkers. And they challenged us to do something that up until that point, it hadn't been done. But we knew, and I can still, and Randy Schultz is with us today. He was one of our, or is one of our committee members. After those votes, and we knew what we were going to do, I shuddered at the amount of work that was involved. But that was coming up on 5 years ago, and it was definitely well worth it. And Chris, help keep me if I go over a little bit. It looks like I'm about 3.5 minutes, so just to keep me in line here. So some critical steps, and we can take questions about this, but Boulder Junction received two PSC broadband grants for around $4 million. Boulder Junction committed $3.8 million, and our private partner, which was CenturyLink, then went to Lumen, then went to Brightspeed during this process, put in about $800,000 or $900,000. The piece about contracts, and we knew because Boulder Junction was making a significant financial commitment, we had to have very distinct contracts. Randy Schultz was invaluable in helping us do that. We had 2 contracts. Negotiation time on those 2 contracts was 10.5 months. So that was a great deal of work. Marketing and communications, there are a lot of points here. Marketing and communications is without a doubt the most important thing to ensure project success. And it's about communications, not once, not twice, but over and over and over again, having a cadence, branding. You see a snapshot of our website here. Julie Ashley was one of our technical folks who worked with us on website marketing and communications. Just absolutely wonderful. The media. So we knew that we need to communicate with our stakeholders with the media's help. It also helped us promote the community and what we were doing, and we just embraced that. Project management, Boulder Junction led weekly project management meetings with CenturyLink, Lumen, Brightspeed for 3.5 years. That was a significant commitment. Getting through that sale between CenturyLink, Lumen, and Brightspeed, that was a challenge. There's no question about it. Testing and commissioning, we had a very thorough process in order to do this, but we couldn't have done this without the volunteerism. Among the high-speed broadband committee, and if we look at the work group, we have over 5,000 hours of volunteer time with a fairly small group of folks. And then there were others in the community who would help us as well. So what did we learn? We learned that anything is possible if you put your mind to it and if everybody's rowing in the same direction. And that's what we were able to achieve here. And when I mean everybody, I mean everybody. And so especially as Brightspeed, CenturyLink, Lumen was going through all this change, it was not easy for those folks. And it was tough. It was tough. Just the whole relationship was tough because most ISPs are not used to working in a public-private partnership, and we pushed that envelope. We did. But I'll tell you, developing those relationships with that project team is absolutely invaluable. But the end of the day is enhancing broadband. Doesn't really matter where it is or what kind of project. It's really, really hard work. On behalf of Boulder Junction's High-Speed Broadband Committee, thank you. Thanks for having us. Thanks for the PSC. And, Chris, you mentioned the fact that you came to Boulder Junction. Chris Stark was one of those early folks who came to Boulder Junction, gave us some advice. Angie Dickinson came to Boulder Junction on Memorial Day weekend, 2019, kind of told us, what we needed to do to be successful. And we listened. We listened to the training. We did the webinars. We did everything that we needed to do to be successful. So Jim Galloway is our chair. Randy Schultz, who's with us today, absolutely invaluable to the success of this project. Steve Kuhn, Steve knows everybody and everything. Julie Ashley was our marketing and communications expert. Charlotte Coons was our secretary and kept us in line, and I helped wherever I could. So with that, Chris, not sure how you want to do questions, but we're available to take questions.
Yeah, so looking for questions from the group on any of the things that Bill presented on. I can tell you that I was pretty sure it was 2019. I had a chance to come and meet with folks when things were just forming. And when I got back to work, I remember telling folks they're going to get it done. There's just a group of people that had a lot of questions yet, but it was clear the determination, the goal to get fiber to everybody was going to happen one way or another. So I'm glad you finally accomplished that. Questions from the group? While you think of, oh, go ahead, Marta.
Yeah, Bill, impressive project. Thank you for sharing with us today. I saw that you have 5,000 hours of community volunteers on this project. Can you explain a little bit more about what those volunteers are doing and how they're working with your community?
Yeah, that was 5,000 hours, and it was really, I'm just thinking, so we have 6 people. We had a 7th on our committee who's peeled off. There were 2 others. So that was, for the most part, that was 9 people.
Wow. And are they working with community outreach? How specifically are you getting people in your community? It sounds like you did a lot of pre-selling the project, but do they also do customer service, helping people implement it too?
Well, that was a bit of a joke with our group. And I guess it's no, ISPs struggle with customer service, but when we would call each other, we would answer the phone, Brightspeed customer service. So we would help stakeholders and be the liaison between the project and the stakeholder and Brightspeed to get them serviced. And if they had any damage or repair work because of a drop that was done, we would interface with that. So it was daily, daily communications with stakeholders, daily communications with Brightspeed. It really was. It was like a part-time, sometimes it was a full-time job.
Impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Bill?
Bill, quick question here about the individual population. What accounts for the high demand for broadband in Boulder Junction? Do you think that it's income, seasonal, moving to full-time life up there? There are a lot of towns that have a lot of dedication, but do not have high income, do not have high employment or training goals for themselves. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would. So we definitely have, different community during the winter time as opposed to during the summertime. But we looked at it as a number of different areas, and this is all part of our education. So high-speed broadband was needed then and is needed today to help build the economy. Remote working, that it's so easy because I can do a speed test from my home and I get literally 947 by 947 when I do it. There's nothing that I can't do. And so anyone who's working remotely, any new businesses or expanding businesses, and we've seen some of that. Our economic development committee is working to diversify and strengthen the economy now. But so this is the days before COVID. And we did our study and knew that teleeducation was kind of up and coming. And so what happens, 6 months later? COVID. We weren't quite ready yet, unfortunately, but we were well positioned. Telemedicine. We have one of the oldest populations of any county in the state. Telemedicine then was just starting. Today, it's really every day. Entertainment, communications, really high-speed broadband really provides a resource and capability to build everybody's quality of life. And I think that at the end of the day, that's why the community supported this project the way they did.
Are you watching customer broadband penetration as the months go on to see if it is still going up slightly or maybe coming down slightly?
We know that it's gone up a bit, but we don't have that insight into Brightspeed's customers. But we're close enough with the community that folks aren't bailing. We know that. And I'll say this, so every ISP has different pricing, but the pricing that Brightspeed has is very attractive.
Other questions for Bill? Rory?
I want to take time from task force members, so certainly happy to defer, but Bill, thanks for the presentation. I feel like you make our broadband grant program look really good, and it's because of the hard work you guys did from start to finish and still going. Maybe one thing we're trying to think of these days at the PSC is empowering more folks, more local elected leaders and local volunteers to get involved and help participate and make sure broadband works for their community. Do you maybe, and I know Randy's on the call too, so maybe a question for both of you, but do you have maybe one or two pieces of advice of things you wish you knew before you started that you figured out maybe a little bit later than you wish, like one or two pieces of advice or knowledge that you wish that the PSC or other folks could maybe learn ahead of time so they're better equipped to do this work?
Randy, care to comment?
You don't know what you don't know when you start these projects, and we needed to be, as Bill had articulated, we needed a lot more about communications than what we had anticipated. We knew we were going to communicate, but the level of involvement, the number of personal phone calls that people took. So, it's all relative to your community, but ours is one that people like to talk to other people. And so Bill and I and Steve and others talked a lot to the individual stakeholders on a daily basis. We didn't know how much work we were going to have to do to project management with Brightspeed. And a lot of our learnings were on how to make those connections with people and make sure that we got everybody talking and going on the same page. Because, again, think about the time frame of this. ISPs were all about planting fiber along the road. Hooking up customers wasn't even, it's a secondary at best activity. And we spent a lot, for us, the project was about actually getting people connected. And that's part of the reason why we have such a high take rate.
Thank you, Randy. Does that help, Rory?
Totally, thank you.
All right, hey, and we make the program, the broadband grant program, look good because it is good, and it was easy to deal with, and your training was fantastic, and I've been involved with other grant programs, and others aren't quite as easy.
I have a super quick question. I didn't raise my hand, but thank you for the presentation. It's very, very impressive what you guys did over there, especially the vision of your community, the electors, the people that actually pay the bill. One of the things that is very difficult to understand to the general population is what is the appropriate or necessary speed for uploads, downloads, and things like that. And I don't know if your community understood what broadband meant, and high-speed broadband in particular. And in particular, considering that the FCC just actually changed the standard, that if you want to call it broadband, it has to be at least 100 megs downloads and the 20 uploads, right? So how knowledgeable was your community when they make the decision to support, this project?
Yeah, extremely knowledgeable. That was all part of our education. And, each ISP has a different go-to-market model. CenturyLinks at the time, and it's moved over to Brightspeed, was symmetrical service. And symmetrical service is really required for some businesses. Asymmetrical can be a problem, especially with certain communication equipment. But we knew kind of what those service packages would look like, and we we educated the community, so they absolutely knew.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Bill? I wanted to circle back to one of the comments Bill made in his presentation because I think it's important. When he talked about the economy being 95+% driven by tourism, that's the message I've heard from a lot of these northern communities. What broadband means to them is that they can stop seeing as many taillights on Sunday afternoon, and people can now work remotely for the entire week. And of course, if they're working remotely at their lake home or their second home, they're spending their money in the community and keeping those dollars local. And so that was a huge driver. The other thing I can just personally say from the limited interaction I had in Boulder Junction, the education piece, I think, can't be understated. They did a really good job of engaging the community and getting the community excited. I think that then is what resulted in high uptake of fiber, but they communicated the message. They very early on were looking for, why do we need broadband? And it's not just for Netflix. That's a big part, but it's not the major driver. Telemedicine was a big issue for them, as well as security for those people who do have to go back to Madison. Being able to look at their Ring cameras at their lake house and know that things are safe is also something that drives adoption. So in those northern communities where you see a population sign of 1,000, that sometimes does them a disservice because, as Bill said, that swells considerably during the summer months, and you've got a much bigger population to support broadband expansion than you may think. Those are some of the takeaways I had.
Well, and Chris, thanks for that reminder, because one of the pieces of research that we did was a University of Whitewater study. I think it was 2014, and they were already looking at remote work. And this was a Wisconsin study. So it was, I think it was $74.08. That's how much a person spends if they're at their seasonal home or are on vacation. So we took that, we extrapolated that out for, I think we did like a month. And when you start doing that, you really see the benefit to the economy. They're buying gas, they're going out to eat, they're buying groceries, they're having their equipment serviced. All of these things add up. And then, so we already had, Vilas County was one of the counties in Wisconsin, especially northern Wisconsin, that was already seeing an increase in population. And then COVID hit. And we know that our population grew about 10% during that couple of years. And, and then folks could do whatever they needed to do with the remote work from here. So I know we're way past time. Thank you. We really appreciate it and appreciate all the support.
And we appreciate it as well, Bill. Thanks for your time today. Thank you. All right. Well, on one hand, it is really, really, really good to see the success stories that have come out of the work this group has been doing for working on 4 years, and how it's really impacting some of the communities in Wisconsin. If you haven't been to Boulder Junction, I'll be the first to say, when I went up for that meeting back in 2019, that was the first time I was ever in Boulder Junction. Really cool town. And again, I think if you go there and spend 5 minutes at the gas station / grocery store / coffee shop / post office, which is kind of all in one, you'll learn that the people there, when they have a goal, they're going to accomplish it. And they did. So kudos to them. Moving on in the agenda, we have a presentation from the Public Service Commission talking about the group discussions, and that's going to be short, about 10 minutes. And then we'll move into the group discussions, which will be led by Kristen. Rory or Mark, do you want to talk through the discussions?
I'll take it over here. Let me get this slide deck up on screen. Folks seeing that all right? So, I think...
Not yet.
We don't see it yet.
Not yet.
Uh-oh.
It looks like it's trying. It's a black screen.
As it's loading.
It must be a really big presentation.
I'll start talking while it's loading. So I think our goal for the second half of the agenda today is to just spend some time talking with task force members and doing that kind of meeting making and kind of creating recommendations and kind of going over what we've talked about and evaluated and, had speakers and case studies this year and kind of start coalescing that into some recommendations and some more content to pull into our task force report that's due this coming June. So at a really high level, I think, well, Mark and I are just going to go over kind of the task force meetings we've had so far this year, talk about some of the findings, thoughts, ideas that we heard from you all in all of our discussion groups and facilitations. And then I think we'll break out into breakout groups and spend some time talking and discussing where to go from here. So I'm having a hard time getting my slide deck up here.
I'll just go with it, Rory. So,
You got
yeah, first of all, we had a list of speakers and topics. In October's meeting, we had a PSC presentation on Wisconsin Digital Equity Plan and BEAD Challenge process. And then we had a presentation by UW Extensions on their broadband planning workshops. November's meeting, we had permitting and locating presentation by Kathy Jennings from Wisconsin DOT and Scott Nyman from Serenity. This presentation topic discussion brought great awareness and education to ISP planning obstacles. January's meeting consisted of PSC presentation on federal broadband funding, followed by a great panel presentation on EACAM by Angie Dickinson of TDS and Justin Hebner of Solaris, and then presentation on RDOF from Brett Shubner of Lightspeed. February's meeting was packed with great review of digital equity efforts around the state. Chair Strand opened the meeting with an introduction, followed by a PSC presentation on task force recommendations. Then we had a very informative presentation on adoption of broadband and affordability impact on schooling by Rachel Shemlin of DPI, followed by a great update on digital equity outreach programs from David Burke of Techquity. I know Chris liked that name, Techquity. Christy Waits of Northwest Wisconsin Workforce Investment Board, Tommy Hastings and Diana Rodriguez of Everyone On. Moving into October, the topics of discussions, the question was asked, what should the task force explore for this year? The first topic was to establish and support a coalition of willing, engaged broadband leaders to connect communities with providers, local and regional partners, planning and technical assistance for funding opportunities. These were also top task force recommendations in 2021. The next one was to fund and support annual statewide mapping and data collection efforts, such as GeoSoftware, WISER, and DPI digital equity surveys that support stakeholder networks, physical infrastructure networking, and overall broadband planning efforts. And again, these were more 2022-2023 task force recommendations. And then we have identify state and organizational agencies that are involved in broadband deployment, describe their roles, services, and resources, followed by create a resource map that can be used by communities and ISPs as they form stakeholder networks, part of broadband planning and deployment. And that was a 2021-2022 task force recommendation. Then we have preparing for BEAD, dealing with compliance costs such as letter of credit. Next key topic that we discussed was broadband affordability, ACP outreach, and other adoption barriers. And then finally address added deployment costs such as permitting, locates, and workforce. Continuing with October, it was a big discussion that month, was suggestions for speakers and additional information for task force members. Speaker suggestions were update from ISP and grant recipients on their project areas and how the task force can assist them with their projects. As Chris mentioned, Bill just gave a great example of their project, so thanks again, Bill, for that. Next one was government officials overseeing broadband access on their progress and challenges, so task force can make policy and funding recommendations. And lastly, for October is underwriter and seller bonds funds on their success stories and results of their work. For additional information and resources needed for the task force members to participate, advocate, and plan related broadband deployments, they were explore previous recommendations around aligning local ordinances to encourage more deployment, such as Dig Once policy and aligning permitting, and asking the question, have these efforts helped with the deployment of fiber? Next one was more information on grant funding distributions and to see a map overlay of congressional and state districts, more data, information on entities with no broadband access and projects, update on ACP effect on Wisconsin residents and broadband affordability improvements since ACP inception, and finally, a solid understanding of next steps for Wisconsin digital equity and BEAD plans that explain how the funds will be distributed to maximize impacted dollars. Hey, there you go. Go to slide 5, Rory. There you go. For November, the topic was preventing permitting delays and locates. Again, I think this was a very informative and educated topic to discuss and very informative for a lot of the task force members not involved with ISPs. The suggestions for permitting were to streamline permitting process through transparency and accountability, partner with local governments and tribes to help facilitate ease and permitting process, increase communication, collaboration to locate and permit process. A good example is the PSC has the broadband forward and telecommunication forward certifications to help ease and streamline those processes. Have to throw that in there. Rory would yell at me if I didn't. Locates, update state law to implement accountability for providers not complying with locate obligations, develop process to identify and resolve missed locates, determine compensation, create enforcement mechanisms for improper or incomplete locates, increase planning and coordination between locators, parties requesting locates to refine requests, expedite locates, and also troubleshoot delays. All right, Rory, throw it over to you to finish January and February's meeting.
I think it's possible that Roy got kicked out of June or of Zoom. I'm posting the slides.
Oh, he did get left. All right, well, I'll keep going with Rory's slides.
Thank
The
you.
question for January was, what do task force members want to discuss? We're going with the BEAD implementation, middle mile projects, updates, reliability, accessibility, and effect on long haul routes for last mile and cell phone connection, how to assist and streamline BEAD process for local governments and tribes, identify the pain points for BEAD implementation, and how can we smooth and improve the process. Next big topic was affordability and adoption, explore education programs that require online access as it affects workforce development, educate programs that lead to adoption, and then ask the question, how do we leverage all funding opportunities to make it easier for providers to work for adoption and affordability of services and devices? And I think from our first workshop in Dodgeville, we heard a little bit and had some good discussion around that. The other two topics were update on digital equity, grant recipient progress and their findings, and then FCC digital discrimination rules. February's task force, we discussed annual report recommendations. We discussed, future of ACP, what are state level options for affordability, explore digital equity funds as a replacement to ACP, address adoption barriers, increase broadband adoption through digital literacy programs, evaluate survey data to see if barriers were eliminated, and ask the question, would Wisconsin residents choose to adopt broadband if all barriers were lifted? From there, recommendations were continue middle mile development and community engagement, modify and make exemptions for statutory policies that create barriers for broadband deployment and adoption, and explore broadband access via cellular mobility, and then educate on benefits of better devices and increase use of non-cell phones. Next slide, please, Rory, if you're still on. Okay, thank you. And then again, the big one, presentation that Alyssa, Rory, and myself gave, the last one, last meeting, reemphasize those yellow light progress of task force previous recommendations. Again, increase broadband expansion grant programming, increase permitting coordination, establish state internet assistance program, develop statewide digital navigator program to address adoption issues, coordinate and maximize federal funding, develop coalition of broadband champions through technical assistance, resource sharing, encourage and support tribal coordination, map assets role of state and federal agencies in broadband deployment, and consider modifications to state law related to streamlining deployment of federal funds. Oh, I see Rory's back on. Is there anything you wanted to add to any of that, Rory?
No, sorry, just had a total shutdown, restart, everybody's worst nightmare with a good Zoom meeting. Sounds like you covered it, Mark. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll throw it over to Chris or Kristen.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. So I am dropping into the chat the 3 questions that we're going to talk about during our discussion today. And these are familiar questions. We're really progressing towards gathering material to write the annual report. And so we're looking again for your feedback, your input on what policy recommendations would we suggest for the annual report to the governor and the legislature. What topics would we like to learn more about? Internet for all or other goals of the task force, and are there speakers that we would like to hear or hear from in our remaining months? And then our third question is examples and case studies. And once again, we're looking for supporting our recommendation with case studies and examples. We've certainly heard a lot of really great information from a lot of different speakers. In addition to that, are there other folks out there who might illustrate either a success story or an example of why broadband is needed in a particular context? So those recommendations. This time we're going to go into breakout groups. Marcus has pre-assigned us. There'll be a facilitator in each group. We will continue to take our notes on the Google Doc, and that's linked at the bottom there. And as a reminder, the Google Doc is a publicly viewable document. Your participation on there is anonymous, so you're typing in with, anonymous aardvark or whatever cute name Google assigns us up there. We'll download those at the end of the day today and preserve those for record keeping at the Public Service Commission in compliance with open meeting laws. The participation in the breakout rooms and the ability to suggest material for each one of these questions is limited to task force members. So those of us that are not on the task force, we can observe or we can remain in a room external to one of the breakout meeting rooms. With that, does anyone have any questions before we magically go into our breakout rooms? Seeing none, Mark, are we ready to go?
Yep, 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and discuss those questions. Here we go.
And we'll do one question at a time. So first question, and then we come back and report out. Second question, report out. I did forget to say that instruction. So we'll see you all in 10 minutes.
Mark, you might have to re-add me to a room since I dropped out of the call and came back.
Yes, and I see it's working this time.
Good.
All right, let's see if I can add you to a room.
I think we have Rachel is still out. Jeff is still out. Sal is still out. Marta is out.
Yeah, probably because I came late to the meeting, so.
Let's see. Let's see if I can close all rooms, and let's try this again. It says it's in progress. Oh, the joys of Zoom.
Add more people to rooms.
Let me add Marta. Oh, it says all breakout rooms will close in 40 seconds. Yep, and it says the breakout room is in progress.
You're doing great, Mark.
Yep, I can't even click on thing to add or switch people around to rooms.
Kristen, I got knocked out of room one.
Knocked out of a room. Okay.
Yeah, could you send me back?
We're working on it. We're having a Zoom technical difficulty here.
I'll just keep clicking my heels 3 times.
Yep. It won't let me do anything until the countdown is done, and we'll see what happens. 3, 2, 1. All right.
All right.
Everybody's back.
We're having a bit of a Zoom technical difficulty. We're going to get you right back into your rooms in a moment.
All right.
Hey, quick question while we're back here. If people wrote down suggestions prior to this in the homework, are we restating them to recapture that, or?
Those are captured if they'd like to restate them as conversation starters or to contribute to the conversation. That's great, but we do have those captured.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. Just double checking.
And thank you, Josie. I should have mentioned that ahead of time.
Okay, everybody, we're back and opening the room, so you guys should be going to it all. And there it goes. I see some folks are going.
Mark, do you want to make me a co-host? I think I can get some people in rooms here.
Yeah. And Rory, if you see on there, you'll see where the 2 rooms and everybody assigned.
We got to get Rachel assigned to room 1. There you go, Rachel.
There you go.
Chris, unless you want to remain out.
Chris will get in room 2. I think that's it for task force members. I'm gonna hop into Geez, which one needs me? Probably group.
2 or 1.
I'll hop in group 1. Thanks, guys.
And Chris is still out. Chris, did you get an option to go in yet? Okay.
No. It's okay. If it messes anything up, I can wait
Yep.
patiently too.
Kristen, he accidentally sent that to me, Chris Stark, so he might have meant Chris Meyer instead. So when he saw that, so just an FYI, I'm not supposed to chime in, so I won't.
And Mark, do you want to make me a co-host in case something were to happen?
Yep.
Thanks.
Your co-host, Alyssa's a co-host, and Rory's a co-host.
Why am I co-host already? Oh shoot, I didn't realize that I could have stepped in. Yeah, to help. And Chris Meyer, you're still not in a room.
I'm here with you. And that's okay. That's fine. It's actually kind of nice. When you're watching an agenda and keeping
Take a
track of
breather.
things, it's nice to have a few minutes here where I can just stare at the screen and smile.
Yeah. I wish there was, with the new Zoom updates over the last few months, I wish there was a way that you could rehearse things like this. Because I feel like it's not as functional as it was, or more accurately, I am not as well versed in kind of meeting room assignment as I was 6 months ago before all of the small updates that they made.
Kristen, have you tried the new AI assistant in Zoom? Have you seen that?
I saw that.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
It's so cool.
yeah.
You know,
We,
I always come into meetings 3 or 4 minutes late because I'm
Yeah.
in another meeting, and there's a button there, that says catch me up,
Mhm.
and it gives you a summary of what's been said. Has anybody said my name? Like it was I
Yeah.
asked a question. It tells you that. It's really cool.
Yeah, you'll have to give us a little tutorial on the debrief on that.
Well,
It's
that's
very
like
cool.
everything I know right now. So you've just gotten the debrief. Oh, and there's some really cool it recognizes hand gestures. I don't know if it'll do it now.
Oh,
I know
wow.
that you're supposed to be able to do this and it'll give a thumbs up. That might not be enabled like in this version of Zoom. But I don't know if it works for other fingers.
I'm not brave enough to find out. So.
Well,
At least not right now.
Not here, yeah. So, yeah.
One of these days, these breakout rooms will cooperate. And we have checked on them to make sure that they're working
Okay.
prior to meetings.
You know, Mark, while we're waiting, one of the things I was thinking about, our case studies have generally been sort of broad, right? Like Boulder Junction is a case study. There might be some value in looking at a Boulder Junction or another community that we've looked at as a case study. Say, do you have specific people in the community that have like a healthcare reason that this was a huge help to them, or a business reason, or an education reason? And I was just thinking sometimes those personal stories are more impactful than a general community story as a case study. You know, Edna can now stay at her home for another year or 2 rather than going to assisted living because she can do telehealth and chronic illness monitoring at her home. And she was contemplating moving to group housing at the time. You know, for a community like Boulder Junction, stable real estate prices are really important. And if you have people, especially in older communities, aging out of their homes, you can sometimes get the wrong side of that. And that's another value to communities that you don't always think about, keeping people in their homes longer. It's ironic. When we started this process 5-6 years ago, that was a huge driver. And then, as you've heard over the last year with housing market, they're like, the problem is people are staying in their house too long. You're welcome. We did it. And that's why houses aren't on the market and they're not going in for sale because in Marshfield, like 22% of our homes have a single occupant, meaning grandpa died and it's just grandma living in the house yet. And they're not selling them because they don't have to.
Yeah,
So
it's that agent in place that's been discussed. So that's good. Yeah, no, I'm sure UW Extensions would have some personal case studies out
yeah,
there.
that might be a good one. Yeah, Gail might have some too, kind of
Yeah.
going back a ways to some of the work we did with connecting aging communities back in like 2017 or 18.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get them in time for last year's report, but our up north neighbors, dad is on a internet enabled diabetes monitor for type 1 diabetes. And their son, who uses a wheelchair and is nonverbal, communicates through an iPad. And so they are able to, they're from Mount Horeb, but they're able to be up there in the summer because we have internet, high-speed internet on our block.
That's awesome.
Otherwise, it would be a completely different lifestyle for both of them.
Yeah, and there's almost always a way to figure it out, right? But it's costly, right? Cellular hotspots, you know, there were a lot of those during the pandemic. But when you start looking at the economics of that, you know, we were paying over $100 a month for a hotspot at Marshfield Clinic. You know, people have broadband at home, and you're not getting near the bandwidth you get with, you know, symmetric fiber like they have up in Boulder Junction. You guys ready for snow?
No.
Well, I mean,
We have a choice. So I put my skis away, so it can be done. So.
I think, well, you know, this is the snow that we'll get it tonight and tomorrow, and we'll be gone by Tuesday. But I think I told you guys that last year, right as my time at Marshfield Clinic was ending, part of my severance pay I used to buy a brand new snowblower. And then I only used it twice all year. And so this year it was still nice and shiny. It's still nice and shiny because it hasn't been run once.
Oh, wow.
And if no, whatever we get, it's not running because now I'm past the point, which is Valentine's Day. Every year on Valentine's Day, I tell my family, I'm done shoveling. There's no more for the year. And we all have 4-wheel drive. There's no reason to shovel our driveway anymore. So I'll just look at it. I won't snowblow it.
No, we're supposed to go to Toma tomorrow for work. So I'm like, it's been so nice. And the one day I've got to be on the road these 2 weeks. It's going to be lousy.
Yep, hope it's nice.
Going
and
to the little tourism conference.
Yeah, the Monroe Tourism Conference.
Nice.
Are you going to be there, Beth?
No, I was gonna try to go on Friday, but I have to be up in Tomahawk.
Another good tourism destination, though.
And forestry, that's what I'm gonna be there for.
Oh, cool.
You know, hopefully it's nice. I'll be traveling to those UW Extension's broadband workshops, going Kenosha tomorrow and then Waterloo on Friday. So anybody paying attention, you can sign up for those workshops.
Where's Waterloo?
Waterloo?
About a half hour east of Sun Prairie, going towards Milwaukee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not far from Watertown, not to be confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put the link in for registration. When Alyssa was talking about it, I was stuck on
Yep, I
the
saw that.
27,000 homes that are using ACP right now and doing the math in my head. So how much would that be? So that's a big chunk of people.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know how that impacts sort of the uptake to Boulder Junction because the residents up there, when you're talking about the full-time residents, they tend not to be affluent, right? I mean, it's seniors who live at the lake home, they're living on Social Security and a pension or something like that. So that could be very impactful to some of the residents.
Yeah. Do we know by zip code or county what the ACP rate is? It would be interesting to do a little study to see. I mean, you know, if we can see at a state level or a regional level, what happened as a result of that money missing.
Yes, that was one of the topics for discussion from one of our past meetings to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see the delta, you know, 10 months, 12 months after the fact. What changed? What did we gain with ACP who signed up? And then what was the drop off? And hopefully it's not 1-for-1, right? Hopefully it's less. But there'll be some drop off for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody should be starting. We'll close in 57 seconds.
Now you got to watch a 50-second set and it'll be longer than 57 seconds in your head, right?
Yeah. I thought there would have been an option just to override that, but it's not giving me one. Oh, Annette Smith put in chat ACP data in Wisconsin by city. Thanks, Annette.
This is awesome. It's just like AI. You just say, I wish I knew, and then you get a link.
No one's ever called me AI before. I'm trying to find it by county, but I'll see what I can find.
Appreciate that.
Artificial intelligence, real AI, and net intelligence.
I'm net intelligence. There you go. You could try something else. My bathroom tub is plugged. How do I fix it? Didn't get a link that time.
No, I'm out. That'd be a bad idea.
The answer for me is I call a plumber, so.
Here comes everybody.
Well, welcome back, everyone. All right, let's do a report out. Let's start with room 1. I'm totally putting room 1 on the spot here.
Anyone from our room want to speak? Otherwise, I can blab on for a minute or two.
Go ahead.
All right, thanks, Al. One thing our group talked more than a little bit about was kind of thinking about kind of adoption in digital skills in the context of a more holistic approach to broadband deployment. Just this idea that, you know, building the infrastructure is not enough, and a lot of the funding streams right now are focused on supplying and funding infrastructure. But if you don't have good adoption, the whole system breaks down. So kind of finding ways to think about that a little bit more. We also talked a little bit about kind of a more big picture view about connectivity in any given county, talking about middle mile facilities and how leveraging kind of middle mile, you know, fiber to towers, more enterprise services can make a big difference on kind of 911 connectivity, but also start spurring kind of that more organic deployment picture for smaller last mile projects as well. Matt, anything to add there?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks, Roy.
Great, let's go to room number 2.
Sure. So we had a couple of comments about facilities marking for Diggers Hotline, that they don't have enough time to do that. So if we could lengthen that to 3 business days. And then also what happens when facilities don't mark, that we need a solution to that, or maybe some penalties. We talked about how we need to build up some state level programs, like a state level ACP program was suggested, a state level loan program, reinstating state level funding, just grants, kind of a clawback proposal, like when ISPs don't do what they say they're going to do, how can we penalize them? More transparency so the public can know when ISPs aren't doing what they say they're going to do. And then idea of like the equivalent of a TSA pre-check for ISPs that are performing really well, so that at the PSC we can kind of like fast track them and say, okay, we know that you're, you know, a good player here. Yep, that's what I had.
I'm on mute. Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's go to group number 3.
We just had 2 breakout groups this time, Kristen.
Excellent. All right, then let's go.
Can I grab the space for just a second? Our breakout room was just starting to talk about this, and I think it's been an interest in the past. So maybe let's do a little group discussion. We're starting to talk about kind of policy, administrative, statutory barriers to help maybe make some recommendations there to help make BEAD implementation better. I know Sal was starting to talk about that. I don't want to push on the spot, Sal, but if anyone other folks kind of had specific recommendations, maybe wanted to open the space so we didn't lose that thought.
All I was remembering from, you know, what were presented regarding the February meeting, that one of the things is we're talking about policy changes. There's a lot of recommendations that are really good recommendations, but how can we make policy changes that can streamline the way we, you know, allocate and deploy federal funds? What are the barriers that exist right now in state policy that is preventing us from being able to move forward in a more, you know, consistent way? I think there are many I particularly know they're there but don't understand. And in the second question that is coming forward, I was going to ask that go into seeing what are barriers exist that could be kind of helped by changing policy. That's something that I think we all could learn that we do not know right now.
That's great. I think, you know, BEAD is a monster of a program with a lot of complexity, and
right.
maybe something we can explore for the task force report, if I'm hearing what you're saying, is just evaluating and exploring what those barriers are, and just start by identifying them, and then maybe that's the first step to seeing what can be changed.
Exactly.
State level.
Exactly, Rory. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I wanted to throw in one thing that we sort of mentioned, we're in group one, that the public-private partnership agreement that Boulder Junction had used is a little bit better and more forward-looking and more aggressive than some of the earlier state grant examples. I think maybe adding to the report some desire to review more more fruitful public-private partnerships, learn from them, and encourage municipalities to adopt similar language. I know that Bill would make that language available.
Yeah, kind of finding ways to not rethink Bill's wheel, and if in a nice tight partnership, find some of his contract language, some of his practices, and start sharing that around.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a small amount which cannot be shared, but that's minor, and I don't think an issue.
No, I think that's a great recommendation. Kind of spend more time sharing those best practices, sharing examples of good partnerships so they can be replicated.
And there may be folks on this task force. I, for instance, have some example here to see what works best for some municipalities, but not possible in others. It may also depend a little bit on the providers involved.
Great.
This is great discussion. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add in the group, the large group? All right, let's be inspired by what we've said so far and what we've talked about, and go into our second question. That's, what topics would you like to learn more about related to broadband, digital equity, affordability, internet for all, or the other goals of the task force? And are there speakers that you'd like us to invite to the remaining meetings this year that would help us make those recommendations? So with that, Mark, let's go back into our groups again.
All right, here we go. There we go. And then Dave, I put you in a group too if you wanted to join, from Senator Brad Path's office.
He may have stepped away from his computer for a while. I'm going to go off camera for a few seconds. Be right back.
Hey, Mark, depending on when we wrap this meeting up, I may be just 2 or 3 minutes late to our 3 o'clock debrief. Is it 3 or 3:30? 3 o'clock. So I might be a few minutes late.
Yep, no worries. I'll let the rest of them know.
I have a peer who wants to chat quick on the phone, and he's messaged me twice. I said I'd be available a little before 3. He's like, "Are you available now?" I'm like, 3 o'clock is when the little hand is on the 3 and the big hand is on the 12. No, I'm not.
And if you're lucky, depending on how the discussion go, it might go all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, this is good discussion today.
yes.
People are talkative. That's good.
Yes, and thanks again, Bill. Great presentation, great
Oh, that's great.
information, great examples. I'm looking at the link that Annette set from Education Superhighway shows that Wisconsin ACP adoption, eligible households in Wisconsin, 894,005. And Wisconsin has 426,733 enrolled. That's 48% of the state, with the national average being 44%. So definitely see how that will affect when ACP runs out. Yep, and there it is. It has data list by city in Wisconsin of eligible households and enrolled. Good data.
Mhm.
Oh, Bill put in chat, the Boulder Junction Brightspeed contracts are public documents. The PSC should have them in our e-file. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Bill.
This is great data. Thank you, Annette.
Yeah, so that's something. That's quite the breakdown. Two-minute warning, Chris. I see here that everybody's still talking away, so that's good. 10 seconds, Kristen.
We're ready. Welcome back again, everyone. Welcome back. So from following along on the Google Slides, it looks like there was more great conversation. Let's start with group 2 this time.
Okay, so sort of the nuts and bolts of how fiber works, and then what bottlenecks might be to optimizing fiber, success stories about educating users on, you know, hardware and equipment and all the things they need to like make home and municipal internet and business internet work for them. An evaluation of what happens if ACP does go away and how take rates might be impacted and how that will impact BEAD. Success stories from libraries, talking to libraries about how we can use PSC funding to help them. And then kind of barriers to successful implementation of BEAD for providers and communities. Like how can we help improve implementation? And then again, just questions on permitting, DNR issues, and model resolution language.
It's great suggestions. Thank you very much, Josie. Let's go to group 1.
Roy, you want me to take this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
We kind of picked up where we left off with policy barriers to implementation. We talked a lot about permitting, locating, different federal requirements of the program itself. We discussed municipal ownership and last mile restrictions as it relates to implementation, complexity in mapping and understanding the need as it relates to implementation, and then specifically called out the challenges with railroads and rights of way. And we discussed digital equity in the absence of federal funding. How can we create sustainability in the face of these reduction of funds federally? And then we brainstormed a few different ideas for speakers, including representatives from other states and their kind of models for broadband expansion and implementation of BEAD, and their distinct laboratories of digital equity and what kind of methods they're using to improve adoption and affordability along with implementation. And then lastly, a suggestion for a national representative from large providers and what their kind of outlook is or big picture view for deployment in smaller communities, how that fits into their broadband planning.
Great suggestions. Thank you very much, group 2, and thank you very much, Marcus or Matt. So we are about to head into our third question, and this will be our last time in breakout groups. And then when we'll come back, we'll have a little bit more wrap up of the meeting, and we can discuss your suggestions overall if we have time as well. So third question is examples and case studies. We often support our recommendations with case studies. Do you have a case study or an example that we should highlight or that we should pursue to write up as part of our report? And with that, Mark, I think we're ready to go into our third and final breakout room.
Yeah, so just before Bob, I put you into room 2 to even out the people as some people have left. All right, here we go. 2-minute warning, Kristen.
I'm ready for them.
Or maybe like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, because even though it says 2-minute warning after it's done, then it goes to the countdown.
Countdown, yeah. It's interesting, there are some suggestions for case studies of don't do that. And that kind of maybe reflects the collective learning we've had over the last 3 years, 4 years. Part of the necessary process.
Do you believe there should be more case studies on those ones?
I think we should have more knowledge of those. I would not want to be the don't do that case study, you know, so it's like a sensitivity to, you know, warnings are good. And also anonymity in that situation, so.
Ten seconds, Kristen. I see people already coming back.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Looking forward to your suggestions and hearing your ideas and your case studies. Let's start with group 1 again.
Sorry, I can jump in again. So we initially talked about looking at some potential case studies related to travel coordination and broadband expansion or digital equity related implementation efforts. And then Steve brought up a really neat idea about kind of coming up with some sort of story map for counties or regions based on how their broadband expansion has improved over a number of years. So that was one potential case study recommendation, kind of implementing a visual story map. And then looking at different types of community partnerships, whether there be small partnerships with high schools or libraries, and building that community engagement and buy-in, as well as potential case studies related to educating local elected officials and on the impacts and benefits of broadband, kind of pre-planning and gaining buy-in and partnership.
Thank you. Those sound like great suggestions. Thank you very much. Group 2.
Yeah, so we liked the case study of Boulder Junction, wanted to use that. Examples of digger hotline frustrations for industry, examples of counties and redos that participated in planning activities through PSC funding. The Northwood Technical College digital badging program was specifically mentioned. And then there was a couple of different workforce ideas. So other workforce case studies and examples, a comment about looking to other industries for workforce considerations, working with workforce investment boards to build up apprenticeship programs, case studies pointing out what happens when unskilled workers do installation. I thought was really interesting. Like, so to, you know, make the case for having skilled labor do that. Kind of an example of a household with and without ACP. Alyssa mentioned a group that presented to the task force that wore t-shirts to community festivals saying, if you have bad internet, talk to me. And then we said kind of other examples of good marketing or good community building.
These are all great suggestions. Does the group have anything else that we'd like to add from this question or some of our other questions or points that you'd maybe like to discuss before we move on today? I'm not seeing any hands go up. Okay. Well, wonderful suggestions. And as always, the conversation was very enriching today and very productive. So with that, Chris, I thank you all for your participation. And Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Kristen. And thank you, everybody. This was a great discussion day for us. And that's always appreciated, especially for the folks at the PSC who are looking to us for some suggestions and ways to move things forward. The next item on our agenda is next steps. The only item we have listed there is that our next meeting will be coming up on April 17th at 1 p.m., a little over about a month from today. Mark, Rory, or Alyssa, any other parting thoughts before we wrap up?
Nothing on my end. Go ahead, Rory.
No, I just, staff's going to start taking these recommendations, coalescing them, curating them, filling in things that you guys are wanting to hear more about. So if ideas pop up between now and the next meeting, shoot us an email. Happy to have a conversation, pull in some more thoughts or recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else before we depart for the day? All right. Well, if you're in the area that's going to get some snow, enjoy it. We haven't had a lot this year. So have a great weekend, everyone.